For years, people across America watched families leave Detroit. Factories closed, neighborhoods declined, historic homes sat empty for decades. Entire blocks felt forgotten. But something unexpected is happening today inside Detroit's historic neighborhoods. Buyers are coming back. Young families, artists, entrepreneurs, remote workers, preservationists, people searching for something that many modern cities lost a long time ago. Character, history, architecture, soul. In neighborhoods like Boston-Edison Historic District, Indian Village, Corktown, and Palmer Woods, century-old homes that once faced abandonment are being restored room by room. And for many buyers, Detroit represents something increasingly rare in America: the opportunity to own a truly historic home with real craftsmanship and history behind it. So why are people suddenly buying homes in historic Detroit again? And what does that say about the future of the city itself? Today, we're exploring the return of Detroit's historic neighborhoods. To understand why buyers are returning to historic Detroit, you first have to understand what makes these neighborhoods so special. Because cities simply don't build places like this anymore. Neighborhoods like Boston-Edison, Indian Village, Palmer Woods, and Brush Park were built during Detroit's rise as one of America's wealthiest industrial cities. Auto executives, doctors, lawyers, politicians, business owners. These neighborhoods were designed to reflect confidence and ambition, and you can still feel that history today walking down the streets. Massive brick colonials, Tudor revivals, craftsman homes, Italian Renaissance mansions, hand-carved woodwork, leaded glass windows, original fireplaces, grand staircases, details that would cost millions to recreate today. Many of these homes were designed by nationally recognized architects during the early 1900s, and unlike many modern subdivisions, historic Detroit neighborhoods feel unique block by block. Every house has personality. Every street tells a different story. There's texture here, history, imperfection, character, and for many buyers, that authenticity feels increasingly valuable. Especially at a time when so much modern development across America feels repetitive and interchangeable. People aren't just buying square footage in Detroit. They're buying craftsmanship, atmosphere, identity, a connection to history itself. And surprisingly, compared to many major American cities, some of these homes still remain relatively affordable, which creates a rare opportunity that's becoming harder and harder to find anywhere else in the country. For decades, many people outside Detroit stopped seeing the city as a place of opportunity. Headlines focused on abandonment, population loss, crime, bankruptcy, empty buildings. And while those struggles were very real, they also overshadowed something else. Detroit never lost its foundation. The architecture stayed, the neighborhood stayed, the history stayed, and eventually, a new generation began noticing what had been overlooked for years. Buyers started realizing that they could purchase homes with incredible craftsmanship and historic character for prices that would feel impossible in cities like Chicago, New York, Boston, or Los Angeles. A home in neighborhoods like Boston-Edison or Indian Village might offer original woodwork, stained glass, massive square footage, historic architecture, walkable streets, and a true sense of identity, all for a fraction of what similar homes could cost in many major American cities. But affordability alone isn't what's driving people back. Buyers are also searching for authenticity, especially younger buyers. After years of cookie-cutter subdivisions, chain developments, and identical apartment complexes, many people are craving places with history and personality. And Detroit offers something increasingly rare: neighborhoods that still feel deeply connected to their past. At the same time, remote work changed the way that many Americans think about where they want to live.
This isn't just another real estate platform. This is something different. A place where every property has a story. Search with ease, but discover more than just location and price. Every space comes with context, history, and identity. You don't just see a home, you understand it. Want to sell? Create a listing that stands out by telling what makes your place unique. Save, share, and connect with people who value more than just square footage. We don't just sell homes. We take care of preserving and telling their story. Because every home has a story, let's discover yours. History loves company.
People no longer need to stay tied to the most expensive coastal cities, which opened the door for buyers to reconsider cities like Detroit entirely. Artists, entrepreneurs, designers, remote workers, preservationists, many began moving into Detroit searching for opportunity and space to create something meaningful. And slowly, historic neighborhoods that once felt forgotten started coming back to life again. But buying a historic home in Detroit isn't just about beautiful architecture and low prices. Homes like these come with responsibility, because preserving history is rarely easy. Many Detroit homes are more than 100 years old, and with that age comes challenges. Old plumbing, aging electrical systems, foundation issues, water damage, deferred maintenance from decades of decline. Some homes need complete restoration from top to bottom. Buyers quickly realize these properties demand patience, vision, and often significant investment. But for many people, that's part of the appeal. Restoring a historic Detroit home feels personal, like rescuing a piece of history before it disappears forever. Across the city, you'll find homeowners spending years carefully bringing these homes back to life, refinishing original hardwood floors, restoring stained glass windows, rebuilding porches, repairing plaster walls by hand, researching the history of the families who once lived there. These homes became more than real estate. They become long-term preservation projects, and in many Detroit neighborhoods, that preservation effort is happening house by house, block by block, resident by resident, because unlike many large-scale redevelopment projects, much of Detroit's comeback has been driven by ordinary people choosing to invest in places that others gave up on years ago. But the city's recovery also brings difficult questions. Rising values can create fears about displacement. Longtime residents worry about affordability. Some neighborhoods still struggle heavily with blight and disinvestment, while others rapidly improve. Detroit's comeback hasn't happened evenly, and the future of the city remains complicated. But maybe that complexity is exactly what makes Detroit feel real. This isn't a manufactured version of history. It's a living city still actively fighting to define what comes next. In many ways, the story of historic Detroit is bigger than real estate. These neighborhoods represent something America is slowly losing: craftsmanship, permanence, identity, streets built for people instead of traffic, homes designed with artistry instead of efficiency, communities shaped over generations instead of developed overnight. Places like Boston-Edison and Indian Village remind people what American cities once aspired to be: walkable, architectural, distinctive, full of life and personality. And maybe that's why Detroit resonates so deeply with people right now. Because after decades of suburban expansion and modern development, many Americans are beginning to crave authenticity again. Real neighborhoods, real history, real stories. Detroit still has that. You can feel it walking through the streets, in the old brick homes, the mature trees, the corner churches, the neighborhood bars and storefronts, the scars left behind from decades of struggle. Detroit never became polished enough to erase its past. And strangely, that honesty became part of its beauty. Because these neighborhoods don't just tell the story of Detroit. They tell the story of America itself. Industrial growth, prosperity, decline, survival, reinvention. And today, a new generation is choosing to become part of that story. Not by tearing history down, but by restoring it, preserving it, and living inside it once again. For years, many people assumed that historic Detroit was disappearing forever, that the homes would eventually collapse, that the neighborhoods would never recover, that the city's greatest architectural treasures belonged only to the past. But Detroit refused to disappear, and today, historic neighborhoods across the city are proving something important. People still care deeply about places with history and soul. Buyers are returning not because Detroit is perfect, but because it feels authentic. Because these neighborhoods still carry memory. Because these homes still tell stories. Because walking through places like Boston-Edison, Indian Village, Palmer Woods, and Corktown feels different than almost anywhere else in America. Detroit's historic homes survived industrial collapse, economic decline, population loss, neglect, abandonment, and somehow, many are still standing, waiting for people willing to believe in them again. And maybe that's the real reason that buyers continue coming back to Detroit. Not just for the architecture, not just for the affordability, but for the opportunity to become part of something larger than themselves. To restore history instead of replacing it. To preserve neighborhoods that still carry the identity of the people who built them. Because in a world increasingly filled with places that feel temporary, historic Detroit still feels permanent, real, human, alive. This is historic Detroit. And after everything the city has survived, its story is only beginning again.